Hey, this is Mike Matthews from muscleforlife.com and welcome to my podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who has a PhD in biomedical science from the University of Tennessee. She's done extensive research on aging, cancer, and nutrition. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about some interesting research related to saunas. I actually get asked about it fairly often. If they're good, if they're bad, when you should use them, how often you should use them, and so forth. And she has done some interesting research on this. And also, we're going to be talking kind of on the flip side of clean eating, which I talked about in the previous podcast, and why, yes, it's important to eat nutritious foods, but when we're talking body composition, how many calories you eat is more important, and where those calories come from in terms of protein, carbs, and fat is more important than the specific foods that you're eating. And in this podcast with Dr. Patrick, we're going to be talking a bit more about the different nutrients that your body needs and why they are important, just to kind of balance out, because some people mistook what I was talking about and thought that I was kind of just saying you can eat junk and whatever, and who cares about micronutrients, and that's not the case. So we're going to be talking about that and a few other things as well. So I hope you enjoy the podcast, and I apologize for the poor quality of my audio. I'm not sure what happened. It looks like Skype somehow switched from my good microphone to my webcam microphone, and I didn't realize it when I made the call. It does that sometimes, so I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again. All right, enjoy the podcast.
All right, so thanks, Rhonda, for being here. I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, my pleasure.
So the first thing I thought we should talk about, because I thought it's pretty interesting, is how, and you were saying you've done some research on this, the benefits of going in the sauna, of raising your body temperature. I get asked about this fairly often. People ask if they should or shouldn't go in the sauna after working out, and I haven't really looked into it. So I was just like, well, I know it's not going to hurt anything, so sure, why not? But apparently there are actually quite a few benefits.
Right. I think that, for the most part, some cultures, particularly in Finland and Russia, the sauna has been a large part of their culture. People don't really know the science behind why they like to go into the sauna, but they know they like to go into the sauna and that it does something beneficial for them. They just didn't, know how to pinpoint exactly what that was. And so I actually have been doing quite a bit of research, not my primary focus of research. I'm not doing any experiments, but I've been, reading the literature and reading a bunch of different papers that have been published on the various benefits of the sauna. So let me start by saying, what are the benefits of using the sauna, or to put it in another term, what are the benefits of what I call hyperthermic conditioning? So hyperthermia is the opposite of hypothermia.
Right.
So hyper means elevating your core body temperature. And so there's actually quite a bit of benefits that can be reaped from elevating your core body temperature. And if you've ever gotten in the sauna, you'll notice that if you sit in a hot sauna for like 30 or 40 minutes, what will start to happen after about 15 minutes or so of being in an already hot sauna is that you'll notice your heart rate starts to increase. And a lot of the same sort of cardiovascular mechanisms kick into play as if you were doing cardiovascular exercise. So it's like, I noticed, this straight off when I started using the sauna, is that after sitting in there for about, 15 minutes, it was like I was running. I felt the same effects in terms of the sweat rate, in terms of the heart rate increase, and so I started to get really interested in what was going on in my body, and that's sort of what instigated me to do this research. Probably about 4 years ago, I started doing research on this. So, and lo and behold, there's a huge literature on heat acclimation and the various mechanisms, biological mechanisms that come into play in terms of elevating your core body temperature, and how certain adaptations can occur when you repeatedly elevate your core body temperature, such that once again, when you elevate your core body temperature, such as endurance training or even heavy lifting, weightlifting can do that as well. If you're really pushing it, you're elevating your core body temperature, and so those mechanisms kick on, and so you start to get these benefits. And so in terms of the endurance benefits, there's what happens is you have when you use the sauna regularly, you train your body to when the core body temperature gets elevated, what happens is you have increased blood flow to your heart, to your muscle tissue, to your skin. And in terms of, to your muscle tissue, what happens when you have increased blood flow? Well, you're going to have, more nutrients being delivered, more esterified fatty acids and glucose and oxygen going to your muscles. And I mean, that's great because for people that are endurance athletes, well, they often hit a wall at a certain point and they start to rely on their local muscle glycogen stores. And so what this does is when you're heat adapted, when you hyperthermically condition yourself by using something like the sauna, you actually have increased delivery of these different nutrients there, and that way you rely less on those local glycogen stores, and so your endurance training is sort of better. And also the cardiovascular mechanisms kick into play, so you basically have, like I said, your body starts to, for the same given workload.
Is it stimulating adrenaline, noradrenaline production? Is that what you're feeling? That's what it feels like.
It activates the sympathetic nervous system, so you actually are increasing norepinephrine, or also known as noradrenaline.
Right.
And noradrenaline. It's interesting because noradrenaline also is involved in cooling down the body, which is why I think you actually activate it in the sauna, because your body's trying to cool itself at the same time, right? So, but that also has different benefits on the brain, which I'll probably talk about in a minute. So, and then you start to sweat at a lower core body temperature, and you sweat for a longer time. So it's basically cools your core body temperature because you're sweating, longer. So those sort of things help with endurance. But in terms of, muscle, so you asked, can you lose fat, right? And I'll give you sort of an indirect answer to that. And that is that, yes, you can lose fat, and that's by increasing lean muscle mass. So there's a three really interesting mechanisms that heat stress is able to increase lean muscle mass. And when you increase lean muscle mass, I mean, what does that mean?
Sure.
You're losing body fat, right?
Your body's just converting more energy, which, obviously it depends on how you're eating. If you can have plenty of muscle and you can be pretty overweight if you can eat enough food to do it. But it becomes harder. It's much easier to stay lean, the more muscle you have. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. We can go there. You can go on and on for, a bunch of different mechanisms by what that occurs. But the bottom line is that, hyperthermic conditioning through using the sauna, what it does is when you're in the sauna, one mechanism by which it increases lean muscle mass is by increasing the production of growth hormone. So heat stress, can increase the production of growth hormone by, as much, ranging anywhere from 2-fold to like 16-fold, depending on, the frequency and how hot the sauna is and how long you stay in there. For the most part, the 16-fold is quite excessive. And in fact, I pointed this out in my article just as a proof of principle. But, most people that stay in the sauna for about 20 or 30 minutes can increase their growth hormone levels by 2-fold over baseline. And those that lasts for about 2 hours.
Okay.
The role of growth hormone in preventing degradation of muscle proteins is pretty well known.
Strongly. I guess its anabolic properties are kind of argued, but it's definitely an anti-catabolic, no question. Yeah,
no question. Right, exactly. And the growth hormone increases IGF-1 in muscle tissue specifically.
Right.
And IGF-1, I've done a lot of research on IGF-1. IGF-1 activates this whole signaling pathway. Specifically, we're talking about in your muscle tissue, that activates AKT, which then activates mTOR, which is a critical pathway for protein synthesis.
Right.
So, in that sense, growth hormone can be anabolic, by increasing protein synthesis. But I think, like you mentioned, in humans, how robust that effect is sort of, questionable.
Yeah, anecdotally speaking, like if you look to the bodybuilding world where they're messing with all kinds of crazy drugs, it's kind of a known thing that that growth hormone it increases anabolism when it's in the presence of high dosages of testosterone as well. But if you were just to take, straight inject growth hormone every day, you wouldn't probably notice much of an increase, or you wouldn't notice nearly as much of an anabolic boost as you would with just shooting test.
Right. Yeah. So regardless,
But as you said though, if you are using it, if you net protein synthesis is really what determines it. So you're synthesizing so many proteins, then you have a breakdown rate. So if you can help either side of that equation, in the end come out with more protein synthesis.
Exactly, and that's the bottom line. The bottom line is if you're decreasing the amount of proteins you're degrading in your muscle tissue, then you're having a net increase, and so that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And we see that, there's research on carbohydrate intake and how it relates to muscle growth over time. And from what I've read and I've experienced it myself, and now just working with a lot of people, when you're eating, the more carbs you're eating, the higher your insulin levels are, just kind of at any given point, because you got to fit them in somehow during the day. And while insulin is not anabolic, it does have that anti-catabolic property.
Exactly.
So, basically the more carbs you eat, the more muscle you build over time, basically.
Right. As long as you're sensitive to insulin. You don't want to eat a bunch of carbs and become insulin resistant, because then it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And a really interesting thing about the heat stress, and particularly the sauna studies, there's a few studies on this where they've shown that what happens is that if you go in the sauna, it actually increases the expression of glucose transporters in your muscle tissue, specifically GLUT4. And it's in mice, it's sensitized type 2 diabetic mice to insulin because they increased the expression of glucose transporters, and they therefore became sensitive to insulin, took up the glucose into their muscle cells, and they actually produced 32% less insulin. So I think that the sauna in general...
So that could be like your post-workout sauna, and then you eat your food.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just a really interesting tool that I think people I hope start experimenting with themselves, and also I hope that more research will be done in this area.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many interesting benefits to heat stressing your body, and this is really like
how does a sauna compare to a steam room? Just in experience, the steam room is like unbearable. Like I have a steam room in the condo where I live, and I'll go into it sometimes, but it gets so hot. I actually almost feel like my body is like panicking after like 10 minutes.
Right. So that's a great question. See, the steam room, one of the main differences between like going into having a dry sauna and going into the steam room is that, steam is like wet and it's contacting your skin. And when your skin is burning, it becomes unbearable. Yeah. Like you can't stay in for as long of a time as you can in something like a dry sauna where it's not burning your skin.
Yeah.
So I think the idea is, heat stress, whether it's doing, a steam room for a amount of time or the sauna, most of the studies were done using the sauna. What happens is it activates a variety of mechanisms in your body, which I call the heat stress response mechanisms. And what this does is now the next thing I was going to talk about was heat shock proteins. Growth hormone, heat shock proteins, this increase in glucose transporters, all these things are mechanisms that kick into play when your body has a little bit of heat stress. And so, regardless of whether or not it's the sauna or, a jacuzzi, I don't know if the effects will be as robust, but I do think to some degree, if you're heat stressing your body, those mechanisms are going to kick into play and you will reap some of the benefits.
Right.
But
if you want to stay, for the sake of just being able to be in there longer and then just being more in line with the research, it'd be a dry sauna.
Right. Exactly. And
how long? Like if people were like, okay, would 15 minutes be enough? 20 minutes?
Right. I mean, look, you have to use your judgment. So if you just killed it, lifting weights or like went for a really long run, and then you go and stay in the sauna for an hour, you're gonna it's ridiculous. You can't do that. You know. So.
I would have to take breaks, probably even 10 or 15 minutes. I have to go out and at least cool off for a minute.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, if you kill it in the gym and then do a 20 minutes, heat stress, we're talking about 20 minutes of it already being hot, not waiting for it to warm up. But I think that's something that's a significant heat stress after you've already heat stressed yourself. So exercising is also heat stress. Mm-hmm. So that's the whole point I'm trying to make is that, we're talking about reaping some of these benefits that exercise gives you through elevating core body temperature, heat stressing by using the sauna, and also conditioning your body to this heat stress so that when you exercise, you're more adapted to it and you have these heat stress response mechanisms that are able to cope with it.
Right.
So it's...
Or I guess you could go later. Like you don't have to go to the gym for it if you have access to one at home or nearby or something.
Exactly. Like I used to, when I was in grad school, I lived across the street from a YMCA. And so, I would go to the sauna just just to go to the sauna, and I'd stay in for like, 45 minutes to an hour, depending on, if I didn't work out beforehand, then I would stay much longer.
Yeah.
And I'd bring a bunch of water, and sometimes I'd go out and cool off for 5 minutes because it's pretty intense, and you really have to be careful. You can't, you can't just go in there. First of all, you got to stay hydrated. That's probably one of the number one risks, and drinking alcohol is like the best way you can assure you will injure yourself. Drinking alcohol before you go in the sauna or while you're in the sauna, I mean, that's like the number one cause of death, like that's been associated with sauna, is people
just the dehydration aspect of it.
Yes, dehydration, and also, the alcohol change. It just, there's a bunch of things that can happen. Coagulation, things change. Alcohol does a lot of things. Heat stress on top of that. When you have stress plus stress, it's not good.
Right.
So. But it's really interesting because they also, there's these heat shock proteins that get activated when you're heat stressed, and these HSPs are like so awesome because not only can they like prevent protein degradation, different mechanisms, but very similar to the way IGF-1 does it. But they've also been associated with longevity. So you can, like, in worms and flies, they've heat shocked them, and it extends their lifespan. Wow. And this was something that I had done some research on, like, before I went to graduate school. So I had sort of been familiar with the literature, and I became really interested in it. So I started looking up, like, if there's anything in humans that could, show that this could apply. And what I found was really interesting is that humans that have a polymorphism in their heat shock, one of their heat shock protein 70 genes, that is associated with increased expression of it. Okay, so pretend, it does the same thing that heat does. So increasing the expression of it is associated with, like, longevity in humans. So I think that's really interesting that, you have this heat shock protein, which is essentially a hormetic response. So hormesis, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but
I've heard the word, but I couldn't give you the definition.
All right, so let me sort of just explain this really briefly, because I think it's a very interesting concept that most people are not familiar with, and that is hormesis is just referring to, like, a small amount of stress. When I say small amount, what I mean is not additive stress. So small, like exercise is stress, heat is stress, things like EGCGs in green tea, polyphenols, these things are all slightly toxic to the body, and they add a little bit of stress. And what happens when you stress the body like that is that all these genes, you increase the expression of all these genes that we have in our body that are called stress response genes, whether they're antioxidant genes, anti-detoxification genes, or heat shock protein genes. These genes are activated to help you deal with stress. And when you activate them, it's really healthy because you start to, reap all these benefits that you get by having higher antioxidant activity, by having the expression of these genes that help proteins fold properly, like heat shock proteins,
Right.
And so it's actually a really cool response mechanism, and that's what hormesis basically is. It's like applying a small amount of stress or something that's a little bit toxic, like polyphenols and these things, to activate your body's own stress response mechanisms. So it's a little different than taking something like vitamin C or E, which are also antioxidants. But see, our bodies have genes that are antioxidant genes that do the same thing that these antioxidants do, and so much more.
Right.
So yeah.
Which makes sense, and like why you see a lot of the benefits of exercise, that you can just exercise alone gives you a ton of benefits that you could, if you compare benefits to dietary changes or even intermittent fasting type benefits and things, and then you could get a lot of the same stuff just from exercising alone. Right.
Intermittent fasting is also a type of hormetic stress.
That makes sense.
Like, yeah. See, so now you understand the mechanism. It's basically a activation of stress response genes, and they've shown this, in a variety of different organisms. So I think it's really cool. And with the HSPs are really cool also because they've been shown to prevent muscle atrophy, and there's been a lot of studies doing this in mice and rats, where they'll heat shock them for 30 minutes, and they'll do this a couple times a week, and then they put a little cast on the mouse, this around the soleus muscle around the calf, and so that the mouse can't use this muscle, and they'll do it for 7 days. And then what happens is when they take the cast off, the mice start to exercise and move around, and there's a huge burst of oxidative stress. and which obviously degrades proteins. And so what happens is that it takes longer for mice that are immobilized to rebuild their muscle after being forced to be immobilized for a certain time period.
Mm-hmm.
So what they found was that when they heat shocked these mice, when they what's called whole body hypothermia, it's essentially the same thing as a human sitting in the sauna, but they put this little mouse in a chamber that's like heated, and they found that it like dramatically reduced the degradation of the soleus muscle proteins, and it corresponded to an increase in heat shock proteins, and also they were able to regrow their muscle like 32% faster than the mice that didn't have the heat shock.
Wow.
So I thought this was very relevant to basically preventing atrophy and being able to regrow your muscle without having all that oxidative stress, because what happens is you're increasing the expression of your heat shock proteins. When you sit in the sauna, just under normal temperatures, you'll have a higher expression of that heat shock protein because you've like induced these adaptations. But when you exercise later and elevate your core body temperature, those HSPs, they're primed and they boost the expression. And so you're having more of this endogenous antioxidant activity in your own body that's happening just because you've induced these physiological adaptations from heat stressing your body. So it's really cool.
That's awesome. And do you think that then it would be better to separate, like if you have there's obviously some heat stress from the exercise, and then if later, maybe this is just irrelevant, it doesn't really matter either way, but if then later your body has come, 5 hours later, whatever, you go into the sauna and you do it over again, do you think that would over time be more effective than working out and then going straight in, which is just kind of continuing what you started with the workout, or really it just total time is what matters?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it might, in some instances they've shown that like exercise and heat stress together can synergize. But
obviously it comes with it to some degree. Although a lot of us, like, it depends how you train. I mean, when I'm lifting, I'm in an air-conditioned gym. Like, right. My temperature, my core temperature is raising, but I'm not, I focus more on heavy weightlifting, so my rest times are longer. I'm not going like, I'm not doing circuits, I'm not jumping, I'm not doing CrossFit. I'm kind of like doing some heavy weightlifting and sitting around for 2 minutes and then you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it all depends on people's personal routines, and people will start to self-experiment and see what works best for them. I don't know if there's a magic bullet one answer where it's like, this is the best for everyone.
Probably not.
Probably not. It usually varies, So, but I mean, the point is that using the sauna in general, most people think about using the sauna as a term, for muscle relaxation or toxins, sweating out toxins. And to be honest, there's some literature on that, but really not a lot of scientific evidence. I think a lot of it's been people just sort of making it popular. Right,
yeah, like detox diets, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, it makes sense, but honestly, there's not a lot of science showing that it does, you detox all these heavy metals. There's been some recent literature showing like bisphenol A, you seem to sweat out, which is kind of cool because, bisphenol A is not a great thing to have in your system. Yeah. So, but it's nice to have some science behind why the sauna is beneficial, because like I said, it's been a cultural thing for decades. People have been using it. They don't know why,
Well, I mean, I guess sauna use goes back millennia, really, right? I mean, going back into even Greek times where they sit around in the baths and their version of the sauna.
Yeah, I mean, people cling to and aggregate around things that are beneficial, and they don't necessarily have to understand why they're beneficial.
Yeah.
They just know it, and eventually science catches up and we figure out why. But it's interesting that you see some of these cultural,
just traditions. Yeah.
Traditions, yeah.
And you find that like there's Eastern medicine. There's a lot of that where science kind of catches up and finds some things don't work so well, but some things work great, and finally figure out why.
Right. It's something else very interesting about this heat stress is the benefits on the brain. And I think people are starting to, the benefits on the brain in terms of exercise, like people are starting to become more informed and aware of how exercise can benefit the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those benefits actually have to do with elevating the core body temperature. So, it's in part of this article that I wrote, I talk about some of these benefits on the brain. I personally experienced, when I was doing some experimentation with the sauna, some very potent antidepressant benefits. And so I started to look and investigate the biological mechanisms for this, and it was really interesting because the sauna, it increases the expression of some very interesting brain chemicals. For one, I mentioned norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is important for focus and attention. I mean, people with like ADHD have problems with making, norepinephrine, or noradrenaline,
right,
same
right,
thing.
Yeah. Same thing.
So, yeah, so I that's really interesting that, it helps with focus and attention. Also, what's really interesting is this effect on brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is also something that exercise induces. And brain-derived neurotrophic factor, it increases the growth of new brain cells, so it's like important for neurogenesis, which is cool. But it also has been shown to ameliorate some of the effects of like trauma and stress, and so it has this like anxiety type of effect.
Yeah, which I guess that's one of those anecdotal things that people, whenever you talk to somebody that's into the sauna, that's usually one of the first things they mention is that it helps them relax, it helps them just kind of, forget about the events of the day or whatever.
Right. Well, the funny thing is it doesn't help you relax while you're in there because heat is stressful. And if you're sitting in the sauna,
feel good after.
if you do it right, you're like, I talk about this mechanism. It's painful. It's almost like, just like when you're working out real hard. It's like, it's dysphoric when you're doing it.
Yeah.
But the afterward feeling is very euphoric. And I explain this mechanism, and it's really interesting because most people are familiar with like endorphins, right?
Sure.
Like that's like pretty common, I think, word, to the general public. It's like, oh yeah, endorphins, they make you feel good. So endorphins bind to something called, it's part of your body's natural opioid system, and they bind to something called the mu opioid receptor, which is the same like receptor that things like morphine target. Mm-hmm. And it's this feel good neurochemical that also has anti pain effects. So it's like it alleviates pain. But what's really interesting is that there's also something called dynorphin, which is also part of the body's natural opioid system, and it is responsible. It's that dysphoric feeling, and it binds to a receptor called kappa opioid. And when you're exercising really hard, when you're working out, or when you're in a severe heat, or when you're eating something spicy,
that's what you're feeling.
That dysphoric feeling. That's what you're feeling. And here's the interesting thing: when you produce that dynorphin, and it binds to its receptor in your brain, what happens is these mu opioid receptors, which actually bind the endorphins, they get upregulated. What that means is you make more of them, and they become sensitized to endorphins. So what happens is the more pain you experience, the better the euphoric feeling is, because you're making more of those receptors to bind endorphin, and the receptors become sensitized. So it's like you don't even need to...
That's your body. It's a payoff.
It's a payoff. And, I think, and like you said, anecdotally, if you think about it, like when you have a really good workout, when you feel that pain of a really good workout, the benefits afterwards, that high you feel, that endorphin high, is much better.
Yeah.
So endorphins are also antidepressants. So I think that's part of the reason why this like hyperthermic conditioning through using the sauna can have antidepressant effects. And actually dynorphin modulates the body temperature much like norepinephrine does. If you inject dynorphin into a rat brain, it cools the body temperature. So I think part of the reason why you express dynorphin when you're working out really hard or when you're in the sauna is because your body's trying to cool itself down. Right. So it all makes sense. There's all these mechanisms that explain it. It's just a matter of people getting it out to the public and people understanding that there really is some science behind using heat stress to have a variety of different benefits on not only endurance, but on, lean muscle mass, and as well as on, the benefits on the brain.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's awesome. And I guess the increased blood flow would also just improve recovery, I would assume, right? Like muscle recovery is repairing the damage, or I would think, right?
I would think as well. It's something
I know. Like, just I've never seen any research on it, but it's one of those things that's also just kind of known in the world of weightlifting, bodybuilding. Like, if you let's say you train your legs very hard, they're sore. Obviously, the muscles are damaged, which doesn't always relate necessarily to it's not directly correlated to soreness, but they kind of just go together. And then if you're doing, if you do some light cardio over the next couple of days, you'll find that you just recover quite a bit faster. And that soreness goes away quite a bit quicker, and you can train your legs again, just really from the increased blood flow.
Absolutely. See, that makes sense, and bringing things like nutrients, things like that to your muscle.
Yeah,
also
taking waste away.
Yeah, the anti-inflammatory, pro-inflammatory, all these things that are important for wound healing. They need to get to where they need to be, and having increased blood flow, absolutely helps with that. So yeah, I would agree with you on that for sure. So it's really exciting, this hyperthermic conditioning, I call it, because it's really you're conditioning your body to heat stress. So
yeah, that's awesome. And most gyms these days, I mean, if it's like, I go to an LA Fitness, that type of, where it's just your standard type of gym club, they most have a sauna that everyone can go use.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. Like my gym here, and I go to a gym in Emeryville in the Bay Area, and they have a steam room, and I tried it, and I hated it because...
Sucks, right?
Well, yeah, if the mildew, when you're like water,
yeah,
you need to keep those things immaculate. And I'll just be honest with you, not a lot of gyms are really good at that. So, I'm not using a sauna right now, and I really miss it. Really, really miss it. So I'm probably going to change gyms soon. But, it's because I had so many positive benefits from it. I noticed I would have, running PRs when I was using the sauna frequently, where it was just like, my endurance, I definitely noticed a difference, in my personal time. Yeah. And also,
have you looked into the infrared saunas at all? Do you know any? I've only heard, I don't know if they have anything special. I just heard about it.
I haven't seen any studies directly comparing, infrared, far infrared versus dry sauna on the specific benefits that that I've pointed out in my article in terms of endurance, muscle mass, and on the brain. But, it's something that I'm looking into to see. There's not a lot of research in general. Like the reality is that in our times, money dictates a lot, and
absolutely
can't patent a sauna. So the volume of research on like the benefits of the sauna is not even anything in comparison to like cancer drugs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm hoping that, I can help instigate more research on the benefits of the sauna, but really it was hard for me to find, honestly. It wasn't readily available at my fingertips. So, the reality is, as infrared does, obviously elevates core body temperature. Now, exactly the specific differences between doing like a dry sauna and that, and I can't tell you.
Yeah, it would happen. I've only heard things, but I've never been able to find any good research on it, so I just kind of chalk it up to who knows.
Some people like to make, claims that are unsubstantiated.
Yeah, about like tissue healing and stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe.
and until I see some science, I can say something makes sense, but I can't say definitively, yes, it's better, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I've been getting that question a lot, so I am going to try to see if I can find any research that, shows any differences between the two, but I just don't know yet.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, let me know if you find something. I'm interested.
Yeah, we'll do.
Because I think you can get, like, even for a pretty good price, you could get, even for your home, like a one person, they could get set up, not just even infrared, but I think even just a dry sauna, one person, it's not even that expensive if you have the space for it, like put it in your garage or something.
Actually, my in-laws, my husband's parents, they actually have an infrared sauna in their garage.
Oh, cool.
It's a 2-person one,
okay.
And I think it costs them like a couple of $1,000.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you can get 1-person saunas, or you can get dry saunas, infrared. There's a variety of companies that sell them if you have space for it. If I had space for it,
Yeah, if I had a house, I'm in a condo. If I had a house, I'd do it. I'd put it in the garage.
Yeah, same for me. If I had a house, I'd be on that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so.
Cool. All right, so let's now switch over to the subject of micronutrients and how they relate to performance. And it's timely because the last podcast that I recorded, and I just recently wrote an article on it, something I just kind of talk about a lot, was on the subject of clean eating, right? And in the bodybuilding world, of course, clean eating is, a lot of people equate that to like you're just eating lean protein and vegetables all day long. Maybe like you're going to eat tilapia and asparagus 7 times a day or something like that. Or it's, or you're just very restricted.
Smell pretty bad.
Yeah, it's some of the diets that people go through. I don't know how they do it. Basically, like my position on it has always been, there are a ton of vitamins and minerals, essential type of nutrients your body needs for all different types of things. You need to give your body that, and getting all those from food is hard enough. Even if you stick to organic fruits and vegetables, which there is some research out there showing. I think I've seen with different berries and stuff where like certain organic fruits and vegetables do have more nutrients in them. It's not that the unorganic are going to like kill you or something like that, but you can get more nutrients, I guess, out of certain organic fruits and vegetables. But you'd have to be like pretty. You have to micromanage your diet a lot more than people would probably want to make sure they get everything they need just from food alone. Which is why, of course, I recommend a good multivitamin on top of whatever it is that you're eating. But at the same time, so eating clean, a lot of people, they don't understand that it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get in shape. It doesn't mean that you're automatically going to lose fat or build muscle. Because there's energy balance where you could eat, if you're burning 2,200 calories a day worth of energy and you ate 2,500 calories a day of the cleanest possible foods, you're going to gain weight slowly but surely. It's going to happen. And then on the flip side of that, of course, is now like, well, if it fits your macros crowd, where if you're familiar with that in the bodybuilding world, it's kind of a thing these days where it's like this great revelation that you could eat Doritos and Pop-Tarts every day and still lose weight with no thought. With no thought as to nutrients that your body needs. It's just macros. Like gotta hit that. I have 100 carbs left, so in 50 fat, so I'm gonna eat this pint of ice cream or something stupid like that, right?
Interesting. No, I wasn't familiar with that.
Oh yeah, that's a whole thing. People, there's like Pop-Tarts in particular for some reason are really popular with those. Like it's the ultimate post-workout. I'll have people email me like, should I eat a box of Pop-Tarts after my workouts? I'm like, no, why? Wow. What do you? So yeah, and I know this is an area that you're very well educated in, and I'm very curious on just what do you think are the big correlations between the foods you eat and actually how well you can perform. And then I guess also, like for me personally, I definitely notice a difference in how I feel when I'm eating healthy foods. I've been focusing on eating healthy foods for so long, I honestly don't even remember what it's like to eat a bunch of junk food. But if I think back, I can still remember.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I've done a lot of my research and my postdoctoral research has been on the role of micronutrients, which are about, essential 40 or so essential vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, amino acids that you need, to provide basically. Right. And, these things
through your diet, like the things that your body can't just make.
Yes. Something that your body is not making, you need to provide them through your diet. And the reality is that the majority of the U.S. population does not provide them in their diet, and it's really difficult to get a broad spectrum of vitamins and minerals and essential fatty acids, just through your diet every single day. And I eat a very comprehensive. I try to get as many micronutrients as I can from my diet, but the reality is that I also supplement in addition to that because I know that I'm not getting all of it. So, in terms of I think most people are familiar with, well, you need a lot of vitamins and minerals and micronutrients for health reasons, for longevity, to age better. But I don't think people realize that, yes, these things are also important for your performance. So, you've got, your body is made up of proteins, and I'm not talking about the proteins you eat. I'm talking about you have genes in your body. Genes make proteins, enzymes in your body, and these proteins are what are doing everything that they're doing. I mean, there's proteins in your mitochondria that are important for metabolism. There's proteins in your kidney cells that are important for detoxification. There's proteins in your liver, proteins in your heart. Like this is your body. This is how you are alive. Yeah. And there's, these proteins need... They
regulate a whole bunch of physiological processes, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what they're doing, ranging from your brain to your heart function to, the detoxification to your freaking metabolism. So it's and these proteins, they require what's called cofactors. And these cofactors are minerals and they're vitamins, magnesium, zinc, copper, iron. These are all cofactors. B vitamins. These are all cofactors for proteins and enzymes in your body.
Vitamin D.
Vitamin D is something that I've done extensive research on and just published. Yeah, It gets converted into a steroid hormone that regulates the expression of over 900 different genes in your body. We're talking about 900 different physiological processes in your body that depend on enough vitamin D presence.
Out of what, like 25,000 or something, right?
So it's like 24th of your human genome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy, you know, and 70% of the U.S. population doesn't meet the requirements for adequate levels of vitamin D, which is considered to be 30 nanograms per milliliter, you know, in serum
blood,
levels.
Right? Yeah.
Right. Serum levels of 25 hydroxy vitamin D, which is actually the precursor to the hormone, but it's what people measure. It's the stable form of vitamin D.
Right.
You know, so if you're not getting enough vitamin D and you don't think your performance is being, you know, affected by that, just think of, so you're saying that out of 900 different genes this steroid hormone regulates, you don't think one of them is important for your performance? I mean, really? You know, like that seems kind of far-fetched. So that, you know, that's just something to think about. We're talking about, I can't even talk about 900 different genes. I mean, do I have to say any more about vitamin D? Another one that's really widespread deficiency.
I recommend vitamin D supplement. I take 10,000 IUs a day, probably more than I need, whatever, don't care. But I think probably for the average person, like if you wanted to be safe, maybe 3,000-4,000 a day would probably just be a good baseline.
Yeah, I personally take 4,000 IUs a day, and my levels are about 53 nanograms per milliliter. I recommend getting your levels tested. It's such a cheap test. I mean, anyone that has health insurance, your health insurance pays for it.
Yeah.
But if you don't have health insurance, it's less than $50. I mean, I've seen them for like 25.
I should just go get tested. I know I'm higher than I need to be. I mean, I know to reach toxicity, I think you have to take like 50,000 IUs a day for like 2 months or something like that. So I'm not worried about that. But
well, they've shown you can have toxicity by. It depends on body weight, first of all. Like, but 10,000 IUs a day can show some toxicity in terms of hypercalcemia. This is my main concern with vitamin D. So obviously, if you're lean, the toxicity levels you can reach them at a lower because you know it's fat soluble.
Yeah, so it doesn't get sucked up by body fat.
Right, it doesn't get, you know, it's getting, if you have a lot more body fat, then it's not being released into your bloodstream as readily, so it's less bioavailable. Right. But the problem is that if you have too much vitamin D, you can absorb, so vitamin D helps you absorb calcium, and you can absorb like, you're basically become very efficient at absorbing calcium, but which means you have higher levels of calcium in your bloodstream. Now, if you're doing this for years,
which is going to be the case also with someone like me eating a lot of protein. I mean, like it doesn't. I think a scoop of whey protein is like 50% of the RDI of calcium alone.
Wow. Yeah. So maybe, you know, someone like you.
All right, I'm going down to 5,000. You've convinced me.
Yeah. Because here's the thing: if you have too much calcium in your blood, over time you get calcification of arteries, you know, vascular system, which can cause neurodegenerative disease, heart disease. So you don't want a bunch of calcium in your bloodstream.
Right.
And you know, if you look at some of they've done longevity studies, and there's a couple of prospective studies they've done where they've looked at vitamin D levels, serum vitamin D levels, and all-cause mortality. And what they find is that those with the lowest the lowest levels of vitamin D are the most likely to die early. So they have
like all kinds of diseases and stuff.
All kinds, a wide spread of diseases. Yeah. But also what's interesting is that it's a U-shaped curve. Those with the highest levels of vitamin D were also most likely to die from all causes. And I think that's because of the people that are taking way, 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 way too much vitamin D are getting calcification in their arteries. And so what they found is that people that had levels between 40 and 60 nanograms per milliliter, which I call the vitamin D sweet spot, had the lowest all-cause mortality. And I think it's because you don't want too much vitamin D. You know.
Yeah, you don't want too much of any. I mean.
Yeah.
Drink too much water and you die.
Right. So you know. Anyway, so getting your levels tested is a good thing.
Yeah, that's good advice, and I'm going down to 5,000.
Nice. Okay. But you know, this gets back.
I live in Florida. If I were in the sun more, I'm just always inside typing on a computer. So a lot of people are like, why do you even take it? You're in Florida. I'm like, no, I'm actually in an office. I could be in Siberia. There's no difference.
Right. Yeah, me too. I'm in California, and it's like, but see, the thing is, first of all, I'm a woman, which means I'm like concerned about skin aging. So when I do go out in the sun, I am slathered up in sunscreen. Like I wear sunscreen every day when I go out, and I'm only outside.
All the chemicals, all the bad stuff in that shit.
Oh. Titanium dioxide is what I use. It's not.
Oh, do you do your own?
I do make my own skin cream, but I do not make my own sunscrene.
Oh, okay. Actually, I wrote an article on that. I had done some research. There's some interesting natural solutions because some of the stuff you buy in the stores. I mean, okay, fine, yeah.
Yeah. It's titanium dioxide is a mineral, and it really all it does is reflect the light. So
Yeah. Well, that was recommended if you were going to make your own. It was like, I don't remember now, because I read it a while ago. It was titanium dioxide, and I think it was there was like coconut oil also helped a little bit, and there were like a couple other things you could mix together and make your own.
Yeah. So anyways, but I'm with you. I never go out. I'm always at my computer or in the lab. It's like, even though I'm in California, I'm not out in the sun. And even if you do live in a place where you get sunshine, it also depends on the latitude. You have
and how much skin you have exposed and for how long.
Exactly. If you have melanin, which is a natural sunscreen, there's a variety of factors that regulate, how much vitamin D you can make.
Definitely.
So it's easy to supplement. Now, your body making it in your skin is more efficient. You actually do absorb more, 100% of it, as opposed to like 60%.
Yeah.
But still, supplementing, you're able to get your levels up to an adequate status. And
I guess the same thing goes right for various vitamins and minerals, where some vitamins and minerals in their natural forms are better absorbed by the body, probably because of cofactors like vitamin C and bioflavonoids, whereas other synthetic vitamins like folic acid tends to work better than the natural form.
Yeah, folic acid is definitely an example, one that seems to be really efficient. But I try to get as many vitamins and minerals from my diet as I can.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, one way I do that is by I have a Vitamix, and
those
every
things are
morning,
awesome. You can make soups in them.
Every morning I do kale, spinach, chard, 2 carrots, a tomato, avocado, frozen berries, an apple, almond milk, and then I'll do a banana too for like consistency. And this is every single morning. I make 64 ounces of it. I get 32 and my husband gets 32. And so then I've got a broad, range of colors and different micronutrients that are present in those vegetables. So for example, magnesium is at the center of a chlorophyll molecule. So that means any plant, chlorophyll is what gives plants their green color.
Sure.
So any plant that's green, it's going to be high in magnesium. Kale, zinc, all those dark green leafy vegetables, they have a lot of magnesium in them. Vitamin K is part of the phosphorus source of plants. So green plants have vitamin K. Vitamin K is really important.
Which is, another one like D, where it's like you look at the research coming probably the last decade on K, that a lot of people, to meet the RDI is fine, but there are benefits to going above it.
Right. So some of our research is that what happens is most people, there's different proteins in your body that are required to function for short-term survival, like clotting. You need to have your clotting working properly. If you don't have your clotting working properly, which vitamin K is important for, you're going to hemorrhage out and bleed out. You can die of a hemorrhage.
Right.
Internal. I mean, that's something that you need to have working. So any proteins that, vitamin K is a cofactor for a lot of clotting factors. So any vitamin K you get from your diet is going to go to those proteins because your body knows that it needs it to survive. Mm-hmm. However, there's other proteins in your body which are essential to prevent calcification of your arteries. And matrix GLA protein is one good example. It requires vitamin K2. But the thing is that, preventing calcification of your arteries is a long-term health consequence. It's not something that you're going to worry about until you're in your fifth or sixth decade of life. So your body says, you know what? I only get so much vitamin K a day. Where am I going to put it? I'm going to give it to those proteins that I need to not bleed out. and that makes sense. So what happens is even though you're getting vitamin K, you may not be getting enough vitamin K because.
And what's even I guess it's K is that's one that's like a little bit harder to get in terms of a diet, right? Like I know kale, like you said, dark, but that's one that.
Right. So vitamin K1 is found in green plants, and K1 gets converted into K2 in the liver. And K2 is what's important for those proteins I was talking about that are
for the bone health. Well, it's also related to bone health, right?
Exactly. Also related to bone health. Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is that you can get some fermented foods have K2. I think natto is like a Japanese.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Right.
Yeah, but it's really getting vitamin K2 is not easy from a dietary source.
Yeah.
So, but eating a lot of dark green vegetables, you will get K1. K1 gets converted into K2. You can also, take a natto supplement. They have these K2 supplements that you can take.
Yeah, or you could supplement with K1, I guess.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So.
Cool. So what would you say, like, for what are a couple micronutrients that are directly going to impact performance, whether it be endurance or
Right.
weightlifting?
Right.
We talked a little bit about vitamin D and that it affects all kinds of things.
Right. So I think one micronutrient that would directly relate to performance is magnesium. And the reason for that is, so magnesium is an essential cofactor for repair enzymes, DNA repair enzymes. And this is important for your mitochondria. It's important to prevent cancer, but we're not talking about cancer. We're talking about performance.
Yeah.
Mitochondria. So
because of all the mutation, like if you have mutations that occur like in the wrong places,
Right.
then you're screwed, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's a different topic. I could
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about.
No, I know. But
Yeah. But in terms of like performance, they've shown that like high intensity training, when you're lifting weights, when you're doing this high intensity training, what happens is you increase the biogenesis of new mitochondria in your muscle cells. And in order to increase the biogenesis of new mitochondria, your mitochondria has its own genome, and it has to replicate its DNA. And these DNA enzymes that replicate the DNA require magnesium as a cofactor. So really, while you're working out to make more mitochondria, which is the reason why you're making more mitochondria, is your mitochondria are what's producing ATP. So as you're working out, you're breathing in more oxygen. The oxygen then gets coupled to metabolism. So, things like when you eat glucose, it gets converted into pyruvate, goes into the mitochondria and is used through the Krebs cycle to make energy. This energy is coupled to...
Yeah, mitochondria are like the little energy generators in
Exactly.
cells, right? Yeah.
So this is all happening when you're working out, and magnesium is important to actually make new mitochondria, which are important for your performance.
Right.
In addition to that, when you're working out, because your mitochondria are working harder during a workout, the mitochondria are the source, a big source of oxidative stress, meaning they're leaking out, free oxygen radicals. They're leaking out all kinds of oxidative products, which damage not only your mitochondria, but they damage other proteins. And so magnesium is required to repair that damage to the mitochondrial genome, to make sure that your mitochondria...
And that would be muscle damage as well, obviously. Right? Like
Exactly.
to the fibers themselves. Yeah.
It directly correlates to your muscle damage. The amount, mitochondria are in your muscle cells, and they're really important for muscle function. So they're important to build muscle, they're important to repair muscle, and these things all require magnesium. And 56% of the U.S. population is not getting adequate levels of magnesium, and athletes are particularly susceptible to low magnesium because it's also something that you do sweat out. So
right.
I think that's one micronutrient that directly relates to performance that most people don't realize, and most people don't realize that they're actually not getting enough of. And what
are some good sources of magnesium? Like where you mentioned dark green.
So yeah,
veggies.
Yes, the good dietary sources. Now this is another layer of complication. Scientists are complicated. It's and that's because magnesium is bound. So a lot of minerals, magnesium, zinc, these things are bound to something called phytates, which is part of the...
They block absorption, or am I thinking of something?
Yes, yeah, you pretty much got it. So phytates, we can't absorb phytates.
Right.
We can't digest them, and so things that have the minerals complex to the phytates, we don't absorb them as well because we can't digest the phytates, and so there's the minerals in complex with it. Boom, there goes the minerals.
Right.
But the thing is that things like oats or rice, these things are really high in magnesium and zinc, but they have a really high...
Almonds have a bit too, is right?
Almonds have good... Yeah, I like almonds for magnesium as well.
Yeah, I'm all about almond butter.
Yes, me too. Almond butter, almond milk,
yeah.
And just raw almonds, in general.
Yeah, I like rice milk as well, just because it's easy carbs, and I do like a smoothie after I work out and use rice milk. It's like 25 grams carbs per cup.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
yeah, I usually use almond milk. I haven't looked into what's...
Almond milk's great because there's just not much in terms of like calories. It gives you some taste, and you don't have to, it just adds maybe 20 calories per cup or something.
I see. So you're looking for more of the balance between calories and some micronutrients.
Yeah, we got especially when you're working with certain numbers, you're like, all right, how do I want to spend? It's like a bank account. Like, how do I want to spend these calories?
Right, but I think the magnesium, the almonds and the greens are my favorite way to get the magnesium.
Yeah.
So, but like
spinach too, right? Spinach, I mean, obviously that's one of the green, but that's like a commonly, that has a lot.
Yeah, spinach and kale, Swiss chard, all those green leafy vegetables, definitely. And B vitamins. B vitamins are also really important for performance. And I know most people aren't deficient in B vitamins, but the thing is that, sometimes you can have polymorphisms. Like I think a large percentage of Canadians have a polymorphism in the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene, which prevents your body from using B vitamins as a source of methylation, which is a really important epigenetic regulator in your body. And actually, it's what happens is these people with this mutation have high homocysteine levels, which is bad. But, B vitamins are also cofactors for mitochondria to work properly. So, getting your B vitamins is good. I personally take a B complex. Also, the way as you age, your body can't use B vitamins as efficiently, and you actually require more of them. So there's so many complications, but essentially, you may not be deficient in B vitamins, but it doesn't hurt to make sure you're getting.
Yeah, and you're water soluble, so you'll just pee out the excess, right?
You do. It's water soluble, so you do pee out the excess. But the idea is thinking about micronutrients. If you think about your body as a system, and you've got all these different enzymes and proteins in your body that are important for performance, they're important for longevity, then you start to think about micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals in a different way, because you're thinking about these things are important. They're cofactors for these proteins and enzymes in your body, and if you don't give them their cofactors, they're not working optimally.
Yeah,
and
that's the key, is optimally. Like a lot of people, they don't realize. Well, sure, you can go in and you can work out, you can go to the gym and work out, and if maybe your diet isn't that great, but if you at least are getting enough protein and you're eating a bare minimum of fats that your body needs to kind of do what it needs to do in terms of cellular health and whatever. Like, yeah, sure, you can make progress, but optimal is really the word. And also, and then long-term health, where that's not, like you said, it's not really at the top of most people's minds, but it will be, when you're 50, and if you're having serious health problems, it will be at the top of your mind.
Yeah. Let me tell you, there is nothing better than cancer prevention. And, the best way you can do that is by providing yourself with all the micronutrients you need for these repair systems in your body to work properly. You don't want to get cancer, is ultimately, and that's not something that we generally think about as we're younger, but as we start to get into the 5th decade, it's something you will think about, and you just don't want it. It's just not something you want.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. There was a recent, it seems to come around every couple of years. There's this big sensationalist headline about how multivitamins don't work, or multivitamins kill people, or whatever. And which then I of course, it was that, was it the Select study one that just came out recently, and I got emailed 100,000 times about it. And those types of things are, and if you look at the research of what they were basing that on, you start really digging into it, and then it's really just a joke. And it's almost like, I just wonder, it just seems so biased. It seems like there's such an agenda with things like that, because you can find, and I've kind of like, actually, I have a little copy paste file of all kinds of replies, and you can find, I think I have, I don't know, maybe.
Have you seen my rebuttal to that campaign? My video?
No, I didn't know you have one.
Oh goodness. I did a rebuttal to this whole multivitamins are not only useless, but they're bad, and it's on my YouTube.
I'll check it out. I'll link it in this. I'm gonna make a blog post for this. I'll link that video too, just so people can watch it.
I basically ripped them a new one. I analyzed, personally read over 30 studies that were involved in that, and I identified a variety of common methodological errors in the study. And I point them
out. Bullshit compliant, like,
right, exactly.
Take your multivitamin, over the phone. Yeah, sure. How do you feel? Oh, I feel like shit. Oh, okay, good. It's just
exactly. If you're giving someone a vitamin or mineral supplement, and you're trying to look at an endpoint to see if anything changes, you have to measure something like a biochemical biomarker in the blood.
Yeah.
To show, that they're.
Is it even elevating? Is it even doing anything, or are they just,
Are you giving them an adequate dose? I mean, if you're still not elevating their levels to above what's considered adequate, then how can you say it has an effect? It's that you designed your multivitamin didn't have a high enough dose of these vitamins and minerals.
Yeah.
And also with
which is very common. I mean, you go look at that. That is the supplement game. I mean, it's kind of ironic for me to say that because I have a line of supplements. But the supplement game is to underdose the shit out of everything and be as exaggerated in your marketing as possible. So, and that applies to really every kind of supplement that's out there. But with multivitamins, that's the standard thing. Is like overplay the value of the vitamins and minerals. Like, yes, they're valuable, but I mean, like, some of these companies, they really are grasping at straws with the kind of claims they make. And then anything else that's added is the just include so little of something that is just not even going to do anything, but refer to research, showing all these great benefits if you had 20 times the dosage.
Yeah, I mean, some of these multivitamins, they require you to take 6 pills to get what they have on the back of, they say, oh, it provides this much. And it's like, who's going to take 6 pills of just a multivitamin a day? Like, I take a lot of vitamins, but I get a multivitamin that is it's a 1 a day where it's like, it's got pretty adequate levels of various vitamins and minerals.
Yeah, I do it 2 a day.
Yeah, because it's like, I'm already taking, fish oil, omega-3s, a B complex, vitamin D.
Yes,
all these
spirulina. I like spirulina.
Oh, do you? Yeah. Spirulina is a good source of microalgae oil. But yeah, so, check out my rebuttal to the multivitamin.
I'll check it out. I'll link it too. I'll link it in the blog post.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I also educate people on why, if they have cancer, for example, you shouldn't take high doses of folic acid, because folate in your body is required to make one of your DNA nucleotides called thymine, and cancer cells are rapidly proliferating, and they need to make new DNA to make new cells.
So you're basically just feeding it.
Yeah, you're feeding. It's like fuel to the fire. So, in fact, it's like methotrexate is a folic acid inhibitor, and so it's a very potent chemotherapeutic agent. So it's like, you don't give someone who has cancer, high doses of folic acid, because you're going to accelerate the cancer growth. But the converse is true. If you have people that are healthy that don't have adequate levels of folic acid, or folate, because what happens is that you need folate to make thymine. If you don't have enough of it, you'll start to get breaks in your DNA, which will cause DNA damage, which will cause mutations.
Oh, so that goes down that cancer route.
Right. So it's like you can get cancer if you don't have enough of it.
Yeah.
Or if you have cancer, you shouldn't be taking, high doses of it. So basically, I feel like they did a really terrible job at educating the public, and so I tried to set things straight.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to check it out. I'll link it as well. And because that's like, I look at taking the multivitamin as I guess kind of an insurance policy just for the future. I mean, if I were to become noticeably deficient in vitamins and minerals, I definitely would feel that in performance for sure. But then it's also, I think at least this is my experience, just kind of working with various people, especially people that go from eating a lot of junk food, which more the problem, like you have chemical additives and things, but then you also have, like, for instance, if you're eating a lot of sugar, well, sucrose is not as evil as it's not like, oh, eat sugar and then you get fat and die. More the problem is that if you're eating a lot of sugar in your diet, a lot of those foods are not going to have nutrition, because what type of foods have a lot of added sugar?
Right.
Just crap. So, when people switch from eating like that to eating nutritious foods, in all cases, I mean, I get emails all the time where people are amazed at how much better they feel, how much better their workouts are, and that's what they're feeling. That's from the micronutrients.
And here, the thing is, it's I feel like a huge part of the health and fitness and community. I mean, probably the majority of it focuses on macronutrients, on what you should not be eating, don't eat sugar, don't eat these processed foods, make sure you eat lots of protein.
Or even just ridiculous things like don't eat potatoes because they're starchy carbs. Like, potatoes are the most nutrient-dense food you can eat. Like, potatoes are awesome. What are you talking about?
See, the thing is that people don't focus on these micronutrients that you're not getting. And it's like you said, these are important for a wide variety of physiological processes in your body. And, your mitochondria are they're the center stage of all things. Everything in your body needs ATP to work, every single thing in your body. And, vitamins and minerals, there's so many different vitamins and minerals that are required for mitochondrial function, bottom line. So, if you want to work out better, if you want your performance better, make sure you're getting your micronutrients.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I know you guys are already focused on the protein. Obviously, you need protein.
Yeah.
It's obvious one. I don't think I need to talk about that.
Yeah. In the competitive world of bodybuilding, I know that that whole little trend right now of like eating crappy food and getting lean or whatever, that works for getting to a certain point, but
short term too.
Yeah, short term as well.
It's short term thinking.
It is totally, and it's immediate gratification. It's like, oh, I can eat this Ben and Jerry's and this Klondike bar tonight because it fits my macros. Like, yeah, okay, keep on doing that for a year and let's see how your body's doing. Which, I guess you can counterbalance some of the unhealthy things. Like, I always try to, my version of junk food is like going to a restaurant and just kind of ordering the foods I want to eat. Like, I don't do junk food. I'm not into like fast food or anything.
Right.
So it's not even really junk food. But, if somebody does want to, if you want to go eat some ice cream once a week, there's nothing wrong with that. You're not going to mess up your health, especially if, you have your routine of where the vast majority of your calories come from healthy, nutrient-dense sources. And, if you're
exercising.
And you're exercising, you're doing so much for your body, it can deal with a little bit of crap here and there.
A little bit of crap here and there is good. It's a hormetic response also. I mean, well, it goes back to that hormesis where you a little bit of crap, a little bit toxic, a little bit of stress, activates stress response.
I've actually noticed from people, like, I always kind of would have that where I would just every now and then I'll go, it's usually once a week I'll go and I'll eat, my dinner's going to include a dessert. And if I'm going to eat a dessert, it's probably going to be a pretty big dessert. So it's going to be like a lot of sugar. Or every once in a while go, I haven't done it recently, but like there's like go get a Five Guys burger or something like that. But by doing that, it's never really bothered me. Like I can go do that and then, feel fine. I don't feel any different. But I've spoken to people that have gone really, really strict, like no sugar for extended periods of time, for months where they didn't touch anything that would be considered a dirty or not good food. And then when they do go have it again, it like wrecks them.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that also has to do with your gut microbia, because when you change your diet extensively like that, where you're eating, vegetables or meats, and you have different, microbiota and, bacteria that are in your gut. And then when you start to like eat something else, your gut's not used to digesting it. It's not, so it's like it literally causes inflammation, at the level of your gut.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the first place, the food you eat, the first thing it sees is your gut, right? So, I think some of that has to do with the level.
That would make sense, yeah, for sure.
But I haven't done a lot of reading on this eating unhealthy.
Just Google if it fits your macros, and then you can.
Okay,
I'll get aware.
I'm not sure I agree with it all, but I don't really know what they're stating yet to say I don't.
It's basically what it is it's flexible dieting. It's like, okay, so you want to lose fat, cool. That means that we're going to look at how much energy you're burning, and we're going to put you in a slight calorie deficit, let's say a 20% deficit. Therefore, that is going to equal X number of calories a day. We're going to break that down into 40% of those calories are going to come from protein, 40% are going to come from carbs, and 20% are going to come from fats. There you go. So let's just like randomly say it's 150 protein, 150 carb, and 40 fat, let's just say, grams per day. And then you go figure out what those foods are. Where do you want to get? You want to get those carbs from Pringles? Go for it. You want to get that fat from ice cream? Go for it. You want to get some of your protein from ice cream? Go for it. So it's like that's the concept. And yeah,
I don't know if I agree with that. I think you're going to end up deficient in a lot of micronutrients.
Definitely, no question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So people that where they initially, like if somebody comes from the camp of like, it's almost like the cult of clean eating, where they think that you can't ever like, oh, you want to lose some fat, you better never eat ice cream ever, because if you do, it's going to mess it up. Like, there's a lot of bad information out there in terms of, that losing fat or building muscle is all about what foods you eat, not how much. Like they come from that camp to like, wait a minute, are you serious? Like
it's about getting your body, your metabolism, getting it as efficient as possible. I mean, this all comes down to, losing fat, gaining muscle mass. This is happening, through physiological properties and, processes in your body. So to me, I look at it on I think a deeper level where it's like a molecular understanding of things that are going on. And, like I said, it to me, it comes down to absolutely making all these things work the best they can work. And in order to do that, you need to give them the fuel they need to do it.
Definitely. Yeah. And the metabolic, I guess metabolic adaptation would be the word, that's where you want technically you want your metabolism to be running as inefficiently as possible. Meaning you want it to burn as much energy as possible in the fitness world. Because you want to be able to eat, like ideally, for most people that are working out, they would be able to eat a lot of food every day and stay lean. Whereas I guess an efficient metabolism would be the opposite, right? It'd be like the metabolism that could keep you alive on the smallest amount of energy possible. Because you can slow your metabolism down quite a bit if you just systematically reduce your calories over time. You could go from, and I've run into this, it goes both ways, where like there was a guy, he came, I've been working with him, he was at like 210 pounds, give or take. He was eating like 1,300 calories a day, working out 5 days a week, lifting weights. That's nothing, 1,300 calories a day. I was like, what are you doing, dude? Yeah. So we had him slowly increase his calories over the course of like 2 months, because he had been stuck at that 1,300 for so long, to where he got up to being able to eat like 2,700 a day, and he was 2 pounds lighter in the end.
Yeah. When you said inefficient and efficient, so like in science, the way we think about it, I guess maybe it's a little different than what the fitness community is.
I'm probably saying it wrong. I'm just whatever. What do I know?
Like for us, I've done I did 6 years of research on mitochondria, and so when I say efficiently, what I mean is like, so people that are, when your mitochondria are inefficient, this is in people that are like metabolically, they're non-responsive, they're usually overweight, obese, or
like metabolic syndrome type stuff.
Yeah. So what happens is their mitochondria, even though they have a bunch of energy and they keep eating and keep giving their mitochondria more and more and more energy, their mitochondria cannot use that energy, and that's what we call inefficient. Because it's not. Right. So when I say efficient, what I mean is you can keep giving it its substrates, keep giving it protein, and it's just boom, it's using it like so that's. So I like
that better then. That's what I want. That's good.
Right. Yeah. But sometimes these terms get popularized and they're kind of switched a little bit. But in science, when we say an efficient mitochondria, what we mean is, your mitochondria burn some shit. That's what we're talking about. So
cool. Okay, great. Well, this was awesome. This is very informative. I think everyone's going to really like what we went over because, well, like I said, it's a hot topic right now. The sauna stuff is great. I want to start. Like I said, the steam room is tougher, but I'm going to start doing it some more.
Great.
Yeah, and the micronutrient stuff is awesome just because it's something that I constantly am kind of harping on. Because I don't like the whole, eat junk and get shredded. And it's kind of pushed a lot you have a lot of these guys that are popular on social media networks like Instagram or whatever that are also on drugs and they don't talk about that. So you have guys on anabolics, you have guys on cutting drugs and stuff that, they're getting shredded and they're, posting their meals of like all this shit that they're eating. And and in some cases the drugs that when you know what you're doing with drugs, it's not safe, but if you're doing it right, you almost can't out-eat your body. Like, you need to eat 6,000 calories a day just to not lose weight. Like, if you're a big muscular guy, it's outrageous what some of these guys do. So, it's kind of pushed a lot by that crowd, too, where it's, the people don't realize, like, what is actually going on behind the scenes.
Right. No, of course.
Yeah, and then clean eating kind of gets demonized a little bit, or eating healthy foods gets demonized a little bit. Like, it's this thing of the past, and now, the new thing is, like, all you got to do is hit macros.
I think, instead of thinking about it like clean eating, what does that mean? That's
a
big, broad, sweeping term. You got to think about, it's like you want to get your micronutrients.
Agreed.
Bottom line. And if you're going to, get your micronutrients, you're going to have to get them from, I guess from a lot of clean sources, but
yeah, foods that would be typically, considered clean. But here's the good thing about it, though, is when you start looking at it that way and you start looking at, okay, well, here, I need to get this, here are the the essential vitamins and minerals and fatty acids, things that I need. What kind of foods can I get those from? And you start looking at that list, and there's a lot of great stuff in there. It's not like three foods that you have to eat every day.
Right. No, it's just eating in some cases like the Mediterranean diet in a sense where you're just getting,
Protein,
a lot of
fat,
healthy fats, healthy proteins and vegetables and,
Totally.
So yeah, it's
Cool.
all really interesting. And the hyperthermic conditioning is a new fitness hack that I'm really, excited that, is out in the public now, and I hope to see people using it. And I'd love to hear, anecdotes from, people's personal experiences with it as well.
Yeah,
so,
me too.
Yeah. So if people are interested in listening to me, I also have a podcast.
Yeah, I was gonna say, now how do people find you?
Yeah. So I foundmyfitness.com.
Cool.
I'm on iTunes. So you can find my podcast. It would really help me, if you like what I have to say and you want to help me spread my word, it would help if you give me an iTunes review. That helps to spread,
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah, I forget to ask that too. Yeah, me too.
Yes. First, what you need to do is you need to give Mike a review, and then you need to go and give Found My Fitness a review. Muscle for Life, I guess, is your iTunes, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'll link to all your stuff in the blog post too, but just so people listening know where to go.
Great, yeah, and also if you want to go to foundmyfitness.com and you can sign up for my newsletter, and that's where you'll get my articles and my references, and also you can, if you'd like to like me on Facebook. I really only have 1,300 Facebook fans. So Found My Fitness, Facebook.com/Found My Fitness. If you want to listen to some of my stuff I'm saying on Facebook as well.
Cool.
Be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, thanks a lot for taking the time, and I'd love to have you on again sometime. It's nice to speak to someone that knows what they're talking about.
Oh, I try. There's a lot I don't know. So, yeah, my pleasure. It was fun, Mike. So,
cool.
Look forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, sure thing.
All right, take care.
Hey, it's Mike again. Hope you like the podcast. If you did, go ahead and subscribe. I put out new episodes every week or two where I talk about all kinds of things related to health and fitness and general wellness. Also, head over to my website at www.muscleforlife.com, where you'll find not only past episodes of the podcast, but you'll also find a bunch of different articles that I've written. I release a new one almost every day, actually. I release kind of 4 to 6 new articles a week. And you can also find my books and everything else that I'm involved in over at muscleforlife.com. All right, thanks again. Bye.